Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today is the final day of the college football season. It's all come down to this. We started with 136 teams, and then we went down to 133 immediately because Delaware, Missouri State, and Akron were not eligible because Delaware and Missouri State were brand new to the FBS, and Akron had terribly low grades apparently. So there's that. And then we went through many weeks of football. We went through 14 weeks of football with teams being surprises, some teams living up to expectations, some teams completely failing expectations at LSU. And then after the conference championships, we had 12 left. These 12 teams being Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, Texas Tech, Oregon, whoever the sixth, Ole Miss. Sorry, this is terrible. Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Alabama, Miami, Tulane, and James Madison were the 12 remaining for the national championship, and then we were down to 8 with JMU, Tulane, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma falling short of their playoff game, and then we were down to 4 with Texas Tech with no points to spare, Alabama getting blown out by the new blood in Indiana. Keyword new blood. Ohio State falling short of expectations and selling to Miami in the first half of the game, which they ultimately could not recover. Plus, they played not great Big Ten teams all year. And finally, Georgia, after Kirby Smart goes for it on his own 30, leading Ole Miss to a revenge victory with Pete Golding as their coach. And then we were down to 4 at that point. And now we are down to 2 with Oregon going down in complete flames after Indiana burns them to the ground in Atlanta on Thursday night. And then, that was Friday night, sorry. And then Ole Miss going down to Miami in a very back and forth game, especially at the end, where Miami and Carson Beck come out strong and make their first national championship since 2001, with Indiana making their first ever national championship. That leaves us with 2 teams remaining. Who's going to win it all? We'll find out tonight. So, anyways, let's do this. So, Miami will be hosting a non-conference game, a home non-conference game against Indiana. This is a only 1-game series that they will be scheduling with each other. This will be at the Hard Rock State. Okay, in all seriousness, though, Miami, despite not hosting any first-round games, they actually get to host the national championship. Because if y'all don't know, the national championship was already supposed to be in Miami, and it's at Hard Rock State, and that's where the Miami Hurricanes played the home games at. So yeah. They did that also because that's where the Dolphins play. Yeah, but, Miami. This is, if any year this make national championship and there's great circumstances, it's this year because it's at Hard Rock Stadium. So yeah, there's that. But anyways, why is NC State Memphis right there? Yeah, that game happened forever ago. Yeah. Anyways, and then we also have our second national championship under this 12-team format, and possibly the last if they want to expand it again, because all they want to do is expand to either 16 or 24 or 14, whatever the frick they want. Anyways, let's do this. So, let's just go over these teams. National championship, Miami versus Indiana. Let's talk about Miami for a second. Miami started off the season with a bang by beating Notre Dame in the opening game, which ultimately that put them in the playoffs because they got that head-to-head over Notre Dame. And then they're beating up opponents left and right. And then in a 2-week stretch they lost 3 games, which were to an 8-4 Louisville. Well, I guess they ended up 9-4. A 4-loss Louisville. Also a 4-loss, which they weren't 4-loss at the time. Like none of these teams were 4-loss at the time. I don't think they were, at least. No, they weren't. They lost to Louisville and SMU, who were both unranked at that point, and they ended up being 4 loss teams. So they had a very weird stretch of the season. Plus that Stanford game, yes, they crushed them at the end, but Stanford shut them out for a bit, and then Miami woke up and they scored 42 on them. Yeah, because Stanford actually looked good in that game early, and then Miami just woke up and the top finally came in. So yeah, and then ever since that SMU loss, they have not lost a game since then. They beat Syracuse. They crushed Syracuse. They crushed NC State. They crushed Virginia Tech. They crushed Pitt. They beat Texas A&M. They beat Ohio State, and they beat Ole Miss. All while not hosting any games until this game. Although it's not going to really feel like a home game because it's like that national championship stuff, you know what I mean? So yeah, but Miami, though, it's an advantage that they're at home, I will say, though. They have amazing players like Carson Beck, who's really popped off this year. I think, honestly, coming back to college football with Miami was the right move. He's actually made it further. Ironically, made it further than where Georgia made it with him. So yeah, and then had really good players too, like Mark Fletcher Jr., Malachi Tony, who literally, I'm pretty sure he skipped a year of high school to come to college football early. So shout out to him. I mean, they're really good. That defense has really improved. Like Ruben Bain's really good. Like there's a lot. That defense has really improved, which is why they're here. Miami's defense is what's put them in a spot because the last year, if y'all remember, last season Miami's defense was completely invisible. They lost 3 games because of that. Like they had a great offense but a bad defense. Right into 2023 LSU, but she had a star quarterback at Cam Ward. So there's that. But Miami they addressed the defense and look where they ended up. They're 13-2 in the national championships. So yeah. I will say they have avenged those Louisville and SMU losses very well. So yeah, there's that. But I think how many home games has Miami hosted this year? 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, they hosted the first 4 games at home. 5, 6, 7, 8. This is their 9th home game, by the way. I just realized that. It's technically a home game, though. Let's be completely real. Miami's crowd will show up, that's for sure. They're probably happy it's in Miami. So yeah, there's that. Now, we move on to probably the Cinderella story of the decade so far. The 2020s, to be specific. At least the last 2 years. Indiana. Indiana used to be a really, really bad team. Back in 2023, they went 3-9, and I believe they finished last in the Big Ten that year. They were not very good. This team got 84 scored on them by Wisconsin at one point. This team had to take like an overtime or two just to beat Akron of all teams. And this team they've not historically very successful. Yes, they've had Lee Corso as their coach, and he did pretty well there, I will say, from what I can tell. But overall, though, Indiana is one of the worst college football programs out there in the history of college football. They're just completely like nothing was going their way. They couldn't make a bowl game. They could barely win any games. This team was in the dumpster for a while. They were known as a basketball school, if anything. And then, for the 2024 season, Indiana hires Curt Cignetti. And he was a up-and-coming coach. He was under Nick Saban at one point at Alabama. He was an assistant for Nick Saban at Alabama. And then he ended up coaching at James Madison University, and I believe he brought an FCS championship home with them. And they did so good that in 2023 they went to the FBS level, and they did really good their first season. They did so good they literally had to they literally got into beef with the NCAA about not giving them a bowl game. So which they ended up getting a bowl game after all, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But then he left JMU, put him in a really good spot because they ended up making the playoffs still 2 years later. That's a lot of Curt Cignetti's work. I mean, Bob Chesney did a really good job there too, but Curt Cignetti, that's for sure, built a very good base there. And then he came to Indiana, a team that was not very good at football. They're in the Big Ten just for basketball. You could argue they were Vanderbilt status, honestly. They were around Vanderbilt status for them. Like, yes, they had that good year in 2020 with Michael Penix as their quarterback. But besides that, like, it has not been great for them lately. Until 2024. Kurt Signetti came to the team in 2024 and gave them their best season, maybe even ever at that point, as they would end up winning 11 games that year, which is unheard of for Indiana. They were smashing opponents. Like, they beat the daylight out of when they beat the daylight out of UCLA. I was like, oh wow, okay, clearly this team can actually ball this year, and they might actually have something up their sleeve. And then they got better and better. They got more. They win. They kept on winning. And then they got into the AP poll ranks. I believe they were the first team that season to become bowl eligible with gain the 6 wins. Kirk Signetti clearly was making improvement there, but it wouldn't stop there. He'd win a lot more games. He'd be beating teams like Michigan and all that. And then they come to Ohio State, and then they kind of get their butts whooped. Not like by that much. It wasn't the worst thing, but like Ohio State just handily won that game. Indiana didn't really stand much of a chance in that game. But then they beat Purdue 66-0 the next week. To be fair, that Purdue team was garbage that year, but still. They won one game, but still. And Purdue wasn't much better this year, let's be real. And then Indiana gets a playoff berth, which that automatically just like smashes expectations through the roof. Like, I'm sure their ceiling was like, okay, get to a bowl game. They did not just get to a bowl game. Technically, they didn't actually get to a bowl. They got to a playoff game, which is even better. They ended up going to Notre Dame and losing, but which the game was closer than it actually was. Notre Dame ended up winning that game. But Kirk Signetti, he knew what he had to improve on. When he come back the next year, and they were ranked in the top 25. They were ranked like around 20th or something like that because they did lose some people. Like they lost Curtis Rourke and a few others. They did in that game Fernando Mendoza and a few others on the transfer portal. Then Indiana, 2025, just completely popped off. Like, that Notre Dame game was the last time they lost the game. This team has not lost a game, did not lose a single game in the year 2025. This team has been on fire this year. Let's just look at their schedule. They start off, the Old Dominion game wasn't great for them, but then they be crushing opponents. Kennesaw State, Indiana State. Although Kennesaw State is actually a pretty good team this year, to be fair. I believe they got like 11 wins, something like that. No, 10 wins, sorry. Close enough. Which is unheard of for Kennesaw State, but good for them. And then their moment that like people realized, okay, this team is legit again, maybe even more. When they scored 63 points on number 9, at the time, number 9 Illinois. Which, at that point, when I saw that score, I was like, this can't be real. Oh, my God. Yeah, I don't know. And that it was not a bad Illinois team. Like, that Illinois team went on to win 9 games that year, or this season. But their biggest win probably came against USC this year. There's that. But when they scored 63 in Indiana, I was like, okay, this team is legit. And then they beat Iowa, and then they beat other teams. And then the big road test comes against number 3 Oregon at the time. Then they beat Oregon in a very clutch victory. And then after that, they just be crushing opponents. They had that with that crazy play to beat Penn State where Gus Johnson literally lost his voice. And then they beat Wisconsin, they beat up Purdue, and then they had Ohio State again, who they got steamrolled by the year before. They beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship. And then, which will lead them to the number 1 seed in the playoffs. They were the number 1 team in the country, the one undefeated team left in the country. Which, if you would have asked any Indiana fan 2 years ago, they would have thought that wasn't even real. Now, I can't blame them. They've been bad a lot. They've been really bad the last few years, but yeah. Like, before Kirk Signetti. And then they go to the playoffs. They smash Alabama, which that's Alabama, by the way. I don't care I don't care if Saban's not there still. Saban built a really good program out of that. And Kalen DeBoer is a good coach too. Even though that wasn't his greatest game, but still. That's probably his worst game there, but yeah, but they smashed Alabama, which is unheard of, by the way. And then they beat Oregon even more, beat them up more than they did the last time they played them. And that Oregon team just literally shut out Texas Tech the game before. And that was a very good Texas Tech team, a very good Texas Tech offense, which completely died that day. And now they're in the national championship. Kirk Cincinnati probably has not cracked a smile once this season, but it's for good reason. That man has built an amazing program, and that dude deserves to be in the Hall of Fame right now. Like, Indiana, considering how they've been, this is an extraordinarily amazing achievement for Indiana just to be here. Like, it's crazy, man. Like, shout out to Kirk Cincinnati, man. If that man wins the national championship, even if he doesn't, but especially if he does, he deserves to be built a statue in everywhere in the Indiana campus. That man deserves a statue built of him. That dude, he reminds me of Nick Saban, I gotta admit. He brings a really good. He brings a program to really successful heights. That was not great at first, and then he always is looking for improvement. He doesn't smile much. That man literally is the best coach in college football. Like, he's amazing, bro. Like, give him all his flowers. Like, that dude's amazing. So yeah, anyways, they have a very good shot in the national championship. So who's gonna win this game? Indiana's a 7.5-point favorite. I'm willing to bet that they will cover the spread. But you know what? I'm gonna say Indiana wins. 75% going as well. I think the Cinderella story is gonna have a Cinderella ending. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Fernando Mendoza literally won the Heisman this year, which is insane, bro. Like, good for him, man. Like, Indiana, man, just what a comeback story for them. What a program turnaround. That's for sure. Like, that is the greatest program turnaround I've ever seen. Like, shout out to Kirk Cincinnati, man. That dude's amazing. Anyways, 75% go with Indiana as well. I think they will win. I think they will cover the spread. I don't think. Oh, they blow them out. I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I do think Miami will do better than Oregon did, and probably better than Alabama did. But we'll see. I think Indiana wins it pretty handily, if anything. I have a weird feeling. But yeah, it's just amazing. But like, look at Fernando Mendoza's stats: 41 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. He's been really, really good in the playoffs as well. Like, that team's really good, and I think they're gonna win. I think they're gonna win it all this year. So yeah. Anyways, it's been a great year with college football. Besides my team not doing very good, LSU. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope y'all enjoyed this college football season. I enjoyed it too. We got one more. Please like and subscribe. Have a nice day, and goodbye. See you next one.